the psalmist, David. So when you understand that once you start, you see yourself sitting in the God seat in triple darkness in the middle of nowhere, and you recognize and observe that position, you sitting in the center of creation. That's the mindset. You sitting in the center of creation and you creating everything. Okay, now you simplify the totality of creation. You got to bring it into your 3D model of yourself. I'm God pretending to be Rod. How am I supposed to behave as God in this 3D realm? This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to rewrite who the system told me to be. I'm not going to be Rod. I'm going to be Morpheus Mysticus Magus. Morpheus Mysticus Magus is our chemical name that was adopted by the character Rod in order to break free from the character Rod and become the embodiment of the liberating mind that I want to be, so that I can help other people liberate their mind. So more.
All right. We got a great show tonight. Peace to everybody in the chat. Get comfortable on this Friday night, Friday, May 23rd, Memorial Weekend. So I hope y'all have a great weekend this weekend. But I got a great show for y'all today. So if y'all can, make sure you share this show right now with somebody that you care deeply about, because this show is going to be a show that we could all benefit from. So with that being said, I want to welcome a returning guest and a new guest. And we're gonna have a lot of fun tonight.
Oh yeah.
I want to welcome my brother Sharif. Sharif, welcome.
Yes, sir.
And I want to give a intro. This gentleman right here, Randy Veitenheimer. I'm gonna just read something from the brother's website. Oh man, wait till y'all find out about him. He has a tremendous amount to offer to this world, and I can't wait till y'all hear him speak. Randy's an energy healer and a modern day medicine man, an artist. He's a member of the Potawatomi tribe. I hope I pronounced that right. From Oklahoma, he learned at a young age about the power of plants and vibration in the healing process. Around 19, he began studies in martial arts, which led him to other forms of energy transfer and healing practices from renowned masters and teachers around the world. He also developed a healing method that he calls creative, energetic healing. Welcome, Randy.
Hello there.
Indeed. All right, so let's Randy, what else can you tell us about yourself that we may not know that we should know before we get started tonight, Randy? You're very interesting. I always when I subscribe to Gaia, I have a monthly membership, and I watch videos on there. And when I see some of your stuff, I make sure to watch it. Like I told you before we started, yourself, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Billy Carson's on there. So I like a lot of your stuff. But yeah, what would you like to tell us about yourself that we may not know, Randy?
Well, I think that when I did the Gaia show, they invited me up there and they asked me like, why did I want to be or have a show? And I said, I felt like if I could do a program where I could explain a few things in a way that people have a better understanding of it. And, we get a lot of language out there and every science and every modality out there, and some of it's kind of hard to follow. Mm-hmm. And so what I've done over the years is kind of develop that language out where you could give it to people in a way that they could use it. It's so that's kind of what I do. I work on people. I work on people for every kind of problem and illness you can imagine, and some you probably can't.
Right.
But the idea is generally to contribute and to pass along some of the things I've learned over the years. And so that's what I want to do. That's what I like to do, is to help educate people and heal people. And I think there's a real need for not just me, but for a whole lot of people like that in the world. So.
Yeah. Indeed. And how you doing tonight, Sharif? How's everything with you, my brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm very, very, very happy to be a part of introducing to your community, brother, my big brother Randy Veitenheimer. He and I first got acquainted. I reached out to him a number of years back after seeing him on Gaia, and it was really interesting because at one time, I'm kind of putting him on blast. At one time, he served as a mentor and helped train one of Gaia's top people that's on their recurring people, and that's Emery Smith. And so the first time I saw him was in an interview with Emery Smith, and on Cosmic Disclosure. And they were talking about some very, very interesting things. Two things in particular that piqued my interest. One was portal technology, natural and man-made, and also super soldier programs. So when I first reached out to Randy and we were talking, I told him about my background. He says, "Oh, okay, well, we're family because we do the exact same martial arts style."
Right.
So that was cool. That was really cool.
There's not too many of us that practice on ball.
That's a fact.
All right. So.
That's a fact.
Indeed. Randy, well, I guess since Sharif talked about that and brought up the whole portal thing, let's start out with in terms of portals, and I've heard you in some of your shows on Gaia talk about the Earth's ley line and the grids on the Earth and certain areas on Earth that's extremely powerful. I want to ask you if let's say in terms of reincarnation, let's say I live. Can you
Your voice is off a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
You hear me?
It's a little sketchy. It's not clear.
Check. Audio is bad, Rich.
There we go. Now we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Better? It's better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right. So, Randy, since Sharif started it like that, yeah, I just fixed it, y'all. Thanks for letting me know in the chat too, y'all. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't look at the chat, family, so I may not see what y'all telling me right away because I'm like zoned into the show. But thanks for letting me know, family. Randy, in terms of ley lines, in terms of portals in certain areas on Earth that's extremely powerful, I got a question for you. When you think about reincarnation and you think about, let's say, Randy, let's say I once lived in Egypt 10,000 years ago, Randy, and I did a lot of great work, a lot of great deeds in Egypt. I did tremendous things for that area. It was known as Kemet at that time, in Kemet, and the people loved me at that time. Great things. And I'm reincarnated. It's the year so-called 2025. I'm now known as Radiohead Rich. If I go back to Egypt in 2025 and I lived in Egypt 10,000 years ago, would the land in Egypt communicate with me to let me know that it recognizes me? And if it would communicate with me that it recognized me, how would that happen?
You ever see like stone buildings? They did a study, I don't know, 40 years ago, where they could actually go in and vibrate the walls of a stone building, let's say, and literally pick up voices. Okay. Now, so we say that place holds vibration, but like a wood structure, not so much. Straw and all that other stuff. So when we look at that, we go, okay, everywhere I go and everywhere I step, I leave a vibration in the earth. Now, that is very weak energy. It's equivalent to your thoughts that don't migrate out very far. Okay. Now, can you retain or remember a memory of walking in that place? The answer is yes. So what you're doing is creating it's like a capsule of memory, and what you're doing is re-accessing that. Now, I call them brackets, and I use computer language and things like that to explain it. But when you say, well, I remember what it was to walk around Kemet 10,000 years ago. Well, the reciprocal of that was, does Kemet remember me walking around here 10,000 years ago?
Whoa.
And so we would say based on reciprocal principles and physics and some other weird science that I've come up with, that the answer to that would be yes. Okay. Now, your degree of sensitivity varies, but your degree of access may not. In other words, you may be able to pull up that memory. And, and not only that, you may be able to extend into it and see other people and actually have conversations. I do that sometimes with people, like they get to talking about something that happened 500 years ago, and I go, well, just a minute, let me tap into where that information is, that memory set, and I'll tell you what was going on. I'll tell you what I saw. Now, the current technological way to do that is called remote viewing.
That's my next question. I love this. I love this.
All humans, as soon as they go into, I tell people, close your eyes, and you can be anywhere in the universe.
I love this, man.
And the reason is our reality is photonic, meaning like we see each other, right?
Yeah.
But when you learn to see with your eyes closed, and this is the old mystical sayings and alchemical schools and all that, Russian psi research, they all say the same thing. When you close your eyes, you can be anywhere and any time. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hey, you know, so you mentioned remote viewing, and that was my next question. So it's like real interesting how we're like tuned in on the same frequency. You know, you hear about all this intense training the CIA did with remote viewing and, you know, the experts and it's like, it was, I remember the documents that came out, the, I think that, what was it? The Stargate project that just got released. Yeah. I've read some of that very amazing stuff. I want to ask, just in terms of remote viewing, do you think children are the best remote viewers? Because naturally they come into this realm and they just start saying shit. They be like, my son be like, I was on this planet and I did. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, well, I don't want to just dismiss him, but he's like so sure. And this is like, oh, their imagination. They just be like all over the place. So are they like the best remote viewers?
Well, they say we're still connected.
Right.
So it gets into some concepts of boundaries and interfaces, and this is also true of portals, by the way. But the biggest problem, like Russell Targ kind of started that stuff with some others out in SRI in California. And one day I told Russell, I said, you know, you went with a bad program. You went with a technological, scientific step to be able to see something that like a child sees automatically. Right? It's like if you said, well, you think about your wife or girlfriend or somebody, you have a picture already there.
Yeah.
You don't need to go looking for the picture like on your photos, right? It's right there at that moment existing for you. Okay. And the reality of it is just as great as if that person was standing in front of you. So what we learned, like there were books in the 30s on Tibet, something or other in Tibet. I can't remember the exact name right now, but a lady talked about how you could practice certain meditations. I teach them where you are like literally in that place. And in other words, there's no remote viewing to it. You're already there.
Right.
And so you kind of do the same thing when you daydream. You know, when I first started, like in high school, I realized there's something going on. And I tapped somebody on the shoulder that was kind of daydreaming out in the world, our universe. I call it zero reality, by the way. So number one reality is our physical reality, and then there's zero reality. Zero reality is everything. We're only about 1% our reality is. It's physical, but everything else isn't. So I tapped them on the shoulder and said, hello, hello, hello. And they go, oh. And I go, where were you? And they go, well, I was somewhere else. And I go, I know that. I just want to know where that is. Because I want to be able to go to the same place.
Come on now.
So all stories and all our history is other people trying to go to a place you've been, right? Or to see something you've seen. And so I told Russell all this one day up in Santa Fe, and he went back and wrote a little book, because what I teach is an intuitive way of quote unquote remote viewing, which is actually the same thing that children do and the same thing you can learn through meditation and some of the martial arts that we study. And like I said, it's very simple. It's just a set of exercises you do, right? And the difference between people who can do it and people who can't is people that can do it don't literally have a program. They just do it. And if they don't know how to do it, they give themselves up to it. And remote viewing becomes very interesting, because literally you can know anything and you can be anywhere. It's there's a podcast I'm going to do about that, where I talk about how knowingness, that is the new, I don't want to call it religion, but it's something that needs to supplant science. Knowing it, not believe it, not prove it. You know your own name. That's how you start.
Okay.
If you know your name, you don't have to prove it. You don't have to write out a bunch of numbers or names, or I have a vision of what Randy is. You know, it's just an absolute. So that's where we start. We start with the knowingness of yourself. Of course, that gets into all the martial arts and philosophy and Taoism and 1,000 other things, right?
Excellent.
Rich, real quick, for the sake of the audience, I wanted to know, Randy mentioned Russell Targ. If you guys do a little research, you'll figure out Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, which I've mentioned before. These two guys are considered the guys, they call them the hippies that save physics. Whoa. These are the guys that were funded by the CIA to put together the project, and out of which came what we call remote viewing.
Right. And the thing about that, you had scientists trying to formulate what remote viewing is. And yet, thousands of years of history, we've had all kinds of people that were seers, right? That were the old language, futurist, witches. I mean, you can just pick any name you want, because it scared the hell out of people that you could know more about what is zero reality, what's out there, what's coming, right? And so we venerate prophets and then turn around and denigrate witches.
Amazing, right? Amazing.
You see what I mean, man?
Yeah.
You got a chance, right?
Hey, and you know, Randy and Sharif, maybe the name we often talk about. There's a word, brother named Dr. Phil Valentine used, saying that our language that we use is a light code lockdown language. Maybe the name within itself, remote viewing, is a term that hurts us from remote viewing.
Yes,
because
I agree with you. I agree with you, because you're not remote.
There you go. There you go.
We'll go with just your what was the music? You're here, there, and everywhere. You know.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, remote viewing automatically, if you go into that whole. I mean, I have everybody from Monroe Institute to whoever I've looked at and talked to, but if you look at all that, it's not a function of the intellect. The knowingness of who I am.
Okay.
The knowingness of the world and how it works, you can express it with the intellect, but that's not the same as experiencing it or knowing it. And the same thing's true for yourself.
Beautiful.
How's that?
Excellent.
Yeah.
So with that being said, with us saying, you know, remote viewing, we're not distant from this place we're trying to go at all. No. I want to talk about the idea. One of the things, you had a show on Gaia, and the name of the show was The Energetic Ocean.
Yes.
Great show. When you talk about this concept, the energetic ocean, and I've heard I believe people refer to this as the quantum field also. And
yes.
Yeah. One of the things about the energetic ocean is you said we live in the energetic ocean. Correct. And the energetic ocean is the total of all energies present in all of its forms and variation in existence right now.
Right.
And you said our awareness only includes a small percentage of the energetic field.
Right.
So with that being said, and we say we living in this energetic ocean. You think about swimming. So if we're navigating this energetic ocean and successfully swimming in it properly, whether the water is deep waters, shallow waters, or 3 feet or 6 feet, 8 feet or 10 feet, if we're successfully swimming in this energetic ocean, should we apply the same principles that a swimmer would apply in the physical world? You take swimming practices and you got to learn how to breathe. You got to learn how to be one with the water. There's things you got to do. So should we study swimmers to learn how to navigate in this energetic ocean the way we do in this physical water that we have in this realm?
Good question.
Thank you, brother.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
It is.
And I'll tell you why.
Yes, yes.
Birds fly in the air. Humans don't.
Yeah.
Fish swim in the ocean.
Mhm.
And so we go in and out of that. We go in and out of the ocean. This fish doesn't. Right? In other words, it doesn't know any reality other than that.
Correct.
And the same way we don't know any reality basically of an energetic nature. This is the biggest problem I've been trying to explain to people. And some of it, I'll give an example. I may have died a few times. And one of those times, but I came back. This is the real me. One of those times, it was like somebody asked me what was it like, and I said it's like being in an ocean. It's like you're a molecule in that ocean, and so there's no separation until you have identity. And once you can identify yourself, you have instantly separated yourself from the ocean.
Correct.
So if we look at how humans, what I call, come into existence energetically, it opens up this whole question of what you just asked. It opens up the question of like, well, where'd the energy come from? Well, now we're at zero reality is about 1%. Number one reality. Zero reality is 99% of everything else in the universe. Now, here comes science, and just like with remote viewing, they go, let's call that dark energy and dark matter because we don't know what it is. And the answer is they never asked me or some other people out there because I'd be happy to explain it, right?
Right.
And so we do swim in an ocean. That's a good language because what it means is that we have a choice of where we go with it.
Right.
And there's some idea that the water really doesn't have a choice. In other words, it is not deprived of it, but never granted choice to it. It gets into some real deep philosophy, okay? But because most people just swim along in the ocean and don't take time to go, well, look down and see how deep it is or see what's above. Remember the air above it, or what the hell's land? Except that one that crawled out of it and started walking around. They call them walking catfish.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of truth in what you ask, because we have to resort to metaphor to be able to understand a lot of this stuff, because people haven't brought forth a common language that would allow us to explore it in a way that was knowledgeable and beneficial to ourselves and others. So.
Randy, and I want you and Sharif to touch on this, and this is a very important one, important question. You talked about dark energy being 99% of the universe, and you mentioned the concept of the zero universe and the one universe.
Right.
What's interesting, Randy, is that when we incarnate in this realm, what we call the earth realm, children are scared, petrified of the dark. Yeah. Now, if we're using this term dark energy and this realm represents 99% of the universe, I'm trying to figure out, is this feeling that a child get, is this like a a mistranslation, like the child isn't able to articulate itself yet.
No.
What is the fear of the dark? If this is where we emanate from, where does the fear of the dark from a child come from?
Randy, before you answer, this guy asked the wild question. He has incredible questions. I never say that.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, brother. Here we go. There's scary things over there.
Come on now.
Oh.
Come on now.
Okay, look. Number one reality is physical reality. It's particle physics. It's Planck's scale that goes down to negative 36 or whatever.
Yeah.
And what I did is came up with the Veitenheimer scale from 36, which is the smallest particle. Only I use it as fields.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
36 is 72. Remember the reciprocal. Right? If there's particle, there has to be field.
That's right.
And so when you're born and young, what's in the field? Everything that isn't a physical person. Okay. The zero reality is non-physical. It's non-particle physics. You can throw all that out the door.
That's right.
Because people have the experience of being in that field the majority of their life. And so what that means is in the field, zero reality is demons, entities, spirit attachments, angels, prophets, everybody that's ever lived, ever thought that's ever existed, everything it's all out there. And that's why it's 99% of the universe. Okay. And so we look at that and we have an innate fear of things that we can't describe or can't deal with. I went through it. That's probably one of the motivating factors when I was young. I had horrible nightmares. I mean, the monsters were after me. And so that's where I said, well, why did they only exist when I'm asleep?
Come on now.
Yeah. And so here's what I came up with. Humans are only human about 12 hours a day.
Exactly.
The other 12 hours, you're daydreaming, remember, not here, not present, somewhere else.
Right.
You're dreaming, or you're passed out, drunk, hungover, high fever. Something's going on where you're not present in that physical body. And if you're not present in that physical body, you're not human. That's what I
Correct.
So I don't have any doubts about us, but other people I'm a little suspect of. but the children, children still have access. And we say the veil is very thin or doesn't exist. As soon as they're out, they have imaginary friends. And I think we need more of those. But anyway.
Oh, man. Wow.
So do you see, like, children are, they're not fully present in the physical world yet.
Correct.
And I can measure that. And in the same way, somebody that's schizophrenic or somebody that's in a coma, I've not talked to dead people. Well, I talked to dead people, but I talked to people in comas before because they can still communicate. In the same way that you're a child and you're hearing things, you're hearing other people, you're able to identify where you lived or where your grandmother sat or something, And so that reality is, everybody has it, but very few have this intellectual scientific reality that they keep trying to press on everybody because it blocks our access to the zero reality.
That's right.
And there's another reality, by the way, I'll throw in here, it's called neutral. So positive, negative, they teach in school. Positive, negative, neutral. Neutral is the ideal. That's where we get Taoism. It's where we get all kinds of stuff because they're trying to give you and teach you a place you can access all of this. And it's to be neutral.
Okay.
Sorry to be so chatty, but.
Amazing. Great response.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia. You mentioned schizophrenia.
Right.
Do people who have schizophrenia, do they have more access to this zero realm? Because they're just like, they're in and out.
Well, there was an article the other day, somebody asked, like a little survey, how many schizophrenics have entities? And the answer is all of them.
Right.
So then the answer is like, well, how you or you, right?
Yeah.
And that's a primary thing I work on, because you go through life with all kinds of interference from
Attachments.
things other than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it starts with your mom and dad.
Ooh.
All right. So those are interfering with
Wow.
your consciousness, and may still, we usually grow out of it, but not always.
Right.
And then as soon as you open yourself up with drugs, ayahuasca, alcohol, anything, what you're doing is causing holes in your own energetic field that other things can access. And that's where we get into really portals. That's really the definition of a portal, is an opening in your own energy field, consciousness, awareness, blah, blah, blah.
Hold on. Rich, did you hear that?
Yeah, that's portals are opening in your own energetic field.
Your energy field.
In your own energy. That's wow. Okay.
Yeah, and if you close them off, they don't have access. So I've done this with people with PTSD and schizophrenia. Just close the portal, close the hole up, and then there's no more access for those consciousnesses, non-human intelligence, non-corporeal beings, whatever. I mean, you get into the whole big show of it, but they're no longer able to penetrate into your consciousness and actually guide it, right? So it's very dangerous to ask for guides unless you kind of can figure out if they're a good guide or not, right?
Right.
You know, but with what you said with portals and the opening of your own energetic fields,
Right.
and certain drugs, you mentioned alcohol, ayahuasca. I believe you mentioned that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is it like a gift and a curse because somebody can enter your energetic field, but also I notice when we use the word artist, some of our greatest artists are always on these type of substances, whether it's alcohol,
Right.
whether it's ayahuasca, they're always on something. The newer terms, they might use a drug called ecstasy, and they make the most beautiful art. So something may enter, but you also may gain access to something that the masses who have a closed portal don't have access to, and we have the most beautiful art in the world as a result of that.
Yes, it's the removal of the subconscious.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, Tesla.
The removal of the conscious or subconscious?
Subconscious.
Subconscious. Okay. All right. Explain.
If you remove the subconscious, then you're more open, you can gain greater access. So like Tesla said, I didn't invent anything. Yes. I just at night, I keep a notebook. I would write down where I went and what I saw. Remember remote viewing?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at a lot of artists, especially musical artists, they're all heavy into substances and stuff.
That's right.
Access what we used to call realms, but we'll just call it data right now, or data sets. And so they go where that stuff already is. In a certain language, we didn't create that reality. The reality's there, and I go there and download it. And that's what they'll say. Oh, it just came to me. And I'm like, back to the one that was daydreaming, like, where is it? Where did you go to get that song? Because I might want to go there and write the next one that's about next in line or whatever. Right. So that's the idea behind it, is that if you can shut that down a little bit, you have different access to different parts of zero reality. So if we look at that and go, okay, like the painting behind me, I did that. And somebody asked me like, well, how did you paint that? And I go, well, I had music playing. I was reading a book, watching TV, and making that painting.
You gave the coordinates.
That is the equivalent of drugs, because what I've done is overload my conscious, subconscious, my visual, my thinking. I mean, anybody else trying to get in and tell me whatever the way the world is, right? And so what that is called a creative state, and that creative state is where we heal from, and that's where I came up with creative energetic health. Okay? So in the same way you can create a painting or music, you can create health in yourself or somebody else. That's my idea.
Powerful.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think? Let's explore weird concepts.
Okay.
That's how we grow, by exploring
Right.
what we call weird concepts, right? Based on what you're saying you did to create that painting, you watch a TV, you're doing this, you're doing that. Let's say I want to pray, and I want results from this prayer, whether it's healing or something that I want my prayers to be answered. People often pray at night in silence. I'm a big fan of silence. I come up with some of my greatest ideas in silence.
Right.
What I want to ask you is,
Zero.
what's your thoughts on praying while the TV's playing, your radio might be on? There may be 3 different forms of stimulation happening, and I'm sitting there praying. Do you think that may somehow cause my conscious mind to not interfere with my prayer? Therefore, my prayer might become more successful than if I was silenced, and my mind is like, that shit ain't gonna happen. You know how you meditate and you be like, man, $1 million, you never gonna be a millionaire. If I distract it with outside external stimuli, well, then I'm able to get my message across more clearly. If you know, you get what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I had a martial arts teacher in California.
Yeah.
And they would take us to like the state fair.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to walk forward and tell the sifu like where we would hit the person in front of us. Okay. And if you were too slow or didn't get the right strike, you'd get hit in the back of the head. Okay.
Wow.
So what happened is, this is the quote I came from that whole experience. If you can't do it in a crowd, you're not very good. Okay. So you can't heal somebody in a crowd, or you can't pray in the middle of a parade.
Come on now.
Very good. All right.
Wow.
All right. So
that's right.
All that overstimulation is to lock out the consciousness and actually allow you access to that which is beyond the consciousness. That's the language we do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I want to add something to that briefly.
Please.
First of all, your question, Rich. Jeez, man. Like that's an actual like what Big Brother Randy just mentioned. Even how my Sifu taught us. That's an actual method of shutting down the regular waking conscious mind to directly get to the deeper realms. You know, you overload it, you overstimulate it.
Right.
Even with something like horse stance, okay, toes parallel, knees out this way, lumbar straight, all these things that you have to maintain constantly. You know, it's just like a mantra. You say one word, we can turn any word into a mantra. We can say rich.
Right.
Say it 10 times, okay, whatever. Say it 1,000 times, it starts to sound stupid. The moment it sounds stupid to your conscious is when your conscious shuts down and you get through it.
Yes. Because there's all this mystical language of that which is done in silence or that which is done in private. And it's like very few people have the ability to enter into silence. I mean, in Kung Fu, they'd lock us in a cave or in a room, dark room, and eventually you kind of figured out what silent was.
Right.
But for the average human, you have to be able to do it in a parade. You have to be able to do it married and having a job and dealing with number one reality with all its aspects.
Yes.
And so to be able to do that daydreamy thing or to break through all the interference, that would allow your prayer to go out. Now, we say pray often because we're called conditioning the field, right? So now we get into, you can sit there and think, I want to be rich or whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. But that has very low energetic impact. And that gets into a whole thing I could get into. But if you do it often enough, you're conditioning the field, you're conditioning all the language of attraction and manifesting, and all that stuff comes from one thing. Conditioning the field to the point that the field has no choice but to answer you. And so and people are different. It may require you to say it once and somebody else say it 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. And that's why they used to have those little prayer wheels. Right? So,
You know, when we talk about this, is an amazing conversation. Shout out to everybody that's in the audience listening. You're watching history being made tonight.
Yeah.
this is great fun. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about the conscious and the subconscious mind, and like this internal battle that's taking place, the subconscious, they say, represents feminine energies. They say the conscious mind represents more masculine energies. Do you think, and this is, we incarnate in this realm knowing we're going to have this, I guess, internal dialogue with our conscious and subconscious, and it's supposed to allow us to be this amazing best version of ourselves through the world of polarity. Do you think our mate should also give us this friction that the conscious mind gives us in our internal mind? So the same way our internal mind gives us a friction, should our mate that we choose, like if you have a wife, should your wife or a husband also give you a little bit of friction just to bring the best out of you?
Pain teaches. That's the way we teach in martial arts. So a couple of things. Number one, Freud come along, or one of them, and said, Jung, whoever, conscious, subconscious, unconscious. And I throw in another one, non-conscious. Okay. Now, that's not true. There's no separation in the brain itself for the conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and non-conscious. There's no separation at all.
Yeah.
So what we have in another language would be zones of operation. Okay. And so in the same way, when we interact physically, we have a zone of operation, basically what's called motor control, this area here. And so when you look at that, we shift zones of occupation. We occupy that zone of activity that some people would call working, and some people call resting and meditation and sleep. And all of them are examinable by being able to know the truth of what's going on. So here's the first rule. You give meaning to things. So when you say things like the subconscious or the feminine or the masculine, or apply divinity to any of it, let alone sacredness, what you are doing is defining that only in your own mind, because that may or may not be a shared reality. And boy, that gets into the whole game of being alive and everything. So
yeah. Sharif, did you want to add on to that, or?
Nah. I was just taking some notes on that one in particular. But actually I do real quick.
Yeah.
That is a very, very amazing and frightening bit of knowledge, that the things that we call real are the things that we, in our minds, define, and through our definition, develop an attachment to.
Yes,
that includes especially all the things that plague us or bother us. Yeah, it includes those things. And the reason why I'm saying that, why that just came to me, is because this is one of the services that our brother Randy does for people. He can remotely treat trauma.
Yeah.
You know what I just said? Remotely treat trauma. You know how?
There's no remote.
There's no remote. We said that earlier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But by literally dropping the energetic signature, or the energetic signature out of the incident itself.
Yes. If there's no energy behind it, it's just like the memory in your computer. Hit a delete key. I don't need it anymore.
Right.
I've got 500 or 600 stitches in my body to prove I was there.
Right.
But I don't need to remember it, I promise you, because it was too intense. Exactly. I'll tell you one thing that happened today. Just show you how weird I am. I'm walking down the street and I get to looking at people, which I love to do. The difference is I can interrogate their energy field. I can interrogate them for any information from their age, the weight, number of friends, girlfriends. I mean, it goes, everything's available in the field. Now, I'm walking along and I got to thinking about like the Matrix movies. And remember when Neo is walking along and he sees the girl in a red dress?
Okay.
Okay. And so I immediately thought, well, I need to work out like take a notebook. And every time I walk down the street, it's like, oh, wow, there's a Bentley, or oh, wow, there's a Subaru. Why do I look at the red dress? Why do I look at that particular vehicle? Or like I get to think about Range Rovers and dozens of them come by.
Right.
Then I look at somebody and think, well, I don't think they're beautiful, or I think that one is beautiful. And I write down all that because I want to know, where the hell did I come up with that this one was beautiful and this one wasn't, and that was desirable and that one wasn't?
Yeah.
Because I need to know that for myself. And so that is truly finding out about yourself, because everything you like and do generally is a result of programming.
Right.
And so if you throw that out the door, you find yourself able to be more inclusive in everything around you, right? And of course, this is a Native American way where we recognize everything is alive. Everything has spirit. So we get away from this one's better than that one, right? And then that's a big push in our society, is differentiation. And we go the other direction, inclusion, right? So,
hey, Randy, you know everything is alive, everything has a spirit, everything vibrates. I've always heard people talk about how we slaughter animals, and we shouldn't have slaughtered the animals for food. You see what's going on with the cows and the industry, and they're pumping them with hormones and everything. But I never hear anybody talking about us eating plants. So I guess this is more geared toward the vegans. Now, I think they put something on the plants one time, and the plants was like screaming or something like that. Trying to I think certain plants secrete a certain spray, like to poison you or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you know? I know you belong to the Potawatomi tribe and from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And you work with plants. What can you tell me about the plant world? Do they not want us to eat them? Like maybe animals not want us to eat them? What can you tell me about the plant world already?
Number one, you're not old enough to be a hippie. Because if you were a hippie, you would have known Inagata Devita, right? As a song that went on for about an hour or two or whatever. If you were in a drug state, it went on for a couple of years. Not that I know about that.
Yo, y'all funny. We funny. Y'all like this.
but if you were on drugs and listening to Inagata Devita,
I ain't judging.
At one point, it talks about the scream of the butterfly.
Oh,
and people would freak out. Right?
Wow.
So one of the things I did, I studied with. There's a book called Secret Life of Plants.
Yeah.
And everybody should read that. I've done some interviews about it, and did one recently. But Secret Life of Plants, Peter Tompkins and Marcel Vogel and another guy all talked about how they were the first ones to actually show scientifically that plants had emotions, thought, they had consciousness. And of course, science threw it out the door and tried to beat the hell out of it. But Marcel Vogel was one of my first teachers when I was in my early 20s. And he came, and for 3 years, I studied with him, where we went into meditations and interactions with plants as a way to develop knowledge and skill sets. Like working on people, you could work on a plant in the same way you'd work on a person or an animal. And I've demonstrated that over 50 years, right? Because, like I said, I started studying that when I was in my 20s. And so they demonstrated that. It's just that again, people haven't sat down and tried it. Okay. It's like my grandmother would tell me which plants to go get for healing properties.
Mm-hmm.
And and then he was the last of what I call the cloud shamans. She could look at the clouds and tell you everything is going to happen in the next 3 or 5 days.
That's deep. That's deep.
Yeah. Now,
that's deep.
he was just tapping into the information that's already there.
Mm.
What keeps us from doing that is our education, our religions, our egos, all these things interfere. And that's why the path of martial arts is to get you out of that. And that's why I tell people, if you don't study martial arts beyond 6 years, by the way,
right,
then beyond 6 years, all this stuff starts opening up to you. And it opens up to you kind of like automatically. And so anyway, Sharif, I was thinking about teaching what goes on beyond 6 years. As a one-day class, I would teach them how you open up your consciousness to all of this, right? So Secret Life of Plants is one way to do that, okay? But trees will talk to you. I mean, I could tell you some stories.
real quick to that point, what he's talking about now, again, I'm telling more about what Randy has trained special military units in tracking, where this comes into play.
Yeah, real short. One of my students, once he got out of special forces stuff, I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to go to a tracking school up in Washington State." And I go, "Well, the first thing you're going to teach you is learn to talk to trees." And he just laughed at me. He'd been studying with me for over 10 years. And so he goes up there and he calls me. He goes, "Guess what? The first thing the teacher said is you need to learn to talk to trees."
Oh, shoot. Wow.
And I go, "Because they'll tell you everything. Like white man walk this way." That's an Indian joke.
Hey, Randy, what can you tell us about the and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, the Potawatomi tribe, because that's the tribe you're from Oklahoma.
Yeah, Potawatomi.
Potawatomi, yeah.
Originally part of the Great Huron Nation, right? And it's the only Native American tribe that had "great" in front of their name.
Okay.
Right? The Great Huron Nation, which was around the Great Lakes and off into New York and stuff. And of course, there was a migration pattern that was forced on them, just like everybody else in the world. Nobody's different that way.
Right.
So their forced migration led to Kansas City area, Mission Park, Mission Hill, something, and then eventually into Shawnee, Oklahoma. So there's various groups that are scattered. Citizens Band's what I am. There's Prairie Band. There's Huron Band. And so each group, what would happen when it got too big, they would separate and find a new community. And we have lost that. We have gone the opposite direction, where we've abandoned the concept of community and instead gone into these mega groups. I'm from Dallas, I'm from Austin, DC. And so we lose a lot there, right? It's called, I think it's called something conformal reality, meaning the reality group or the group I belong to conforms to a certain look or certain ideas or certain practices, and they should, right? So we don't find fault really with others that way. So, except in football.
Oh man, wow, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned martial arts a lot, and I know Sharif is into the martial arts.
Oh yeah.
One thing that I always hear people say is that, in terms of, we live in a culture where there's gyms everywhere. Everywhere you turn around, there's a gym. There's a Planet Fitness. There's a New York Sports Club. If you live in New York, there's just all types of gyms everywhere. People have said that there's people that could probably do 1,000 push-ups in a day, but if you ask them to sit still for 5 minutes, it would drive them nuts.
Right.
Now, this is a person who could do 1,000 push-ups in a day. But if you say sit still, don't move, don't blink. Well, you could blink, but just sit still for 5 minutes, it would drive them nuts. What is it about? What's the difference between the strength and stillness versus the physical strength when a brother's working out and his muscles and he got everything going on and he can run faster and all of that? What's the difference with those two types of strengths?
Application. Like, what do you got? Like, I've been going to the gym since I was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What are you going to do with that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I can go and demonstrate I can do this or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, if you do, we used to do like 900 push-ups a day. We used to do 5,000 punches and 1,000 kicks. And you know what we call that? A warm-up. And it was push-ups like this, and then all the way out, and then it was push-ups on the wrist. And I mean, you know, the idea of pain teaches, so we did that to ourselves.
Yeah.
By doing it to ourselves, we got out of having the universe need to teach us through pain through others.
Come on now.
Right. There you go.
That's right.
Right. And so to be able to sit still is a martial art. That's what I said. Like, I formulated a martial art. It's called 10 Sons. And all of it is involved past where you develop punching and hitting and all the other martial arts skills. Yeah. Because now you're ready, once you've been through the physical, to embark on the non-physical, on the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, right? All that becomes available to you because you've already developed your body to the point where, okay, it's functional.
Right.
It's functional in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. I've fallen off a couple of buildings, one a 3-story, another 2-story. I've ripped off both shoulders. I have 99% functionality in this one and this one. Why? Mm-hmm. Because I learned to divert and to control the energy flow through my own body. And in doing so, learn to do it through other people's bodies, to heal other people. Mm-hmm. And I had great teachers that demonstrated it, not teach you, but demonstrate it. And so all that comes about literally sitting still. It doesn't come about by doing anything. It comes about by closing your eyes, sitting still, and reaching out into the universe. Remember that remote viewing? Mm-hmm. Right? It's reaching out and finding that knowledge, like what you said when you were in Kemet 10,000 years ago. I can reach out and find that knowledge. You should be able to, right? And so, and people say, well, why can't I do that? Well, you haven't practiced it.
There you go.
And all these people are like, I want to know how to do this. And I've had people go, well, I go, okay, I'll train you. I said, it's an expensive proposition monetarily, but the worst one is the amount of time you're going to have to spend to learn this.
There you go.
So you have to decide, like when I study martial arts, I'm sure you too, Sheree, I spent an average of 5 to 6 hours a day for 2 years straight at one point. Yes. Every day was so many hours of Kung Fu.
How many years straight? What'd you say? How many years straight?
6 years straight.
Wow.
And at the same time, I was doing Kundalini yoga. So the day started at 3:45 every morning and ended at midnight. Right? So it was like 3 hours of Kung Fu, generally an hour or two of Aikido, and then these secret martial arts that I found teachers for. And I practiced them, and I held a job. Now, did I do anything else? No, I missed the 80s. I couldn't tell you one movie or song or nothing. I missed out all that. Right. But I developed certain skill sets.
Yeah.
Right? And so
it's beautiful. No, that's beautiful.
Everybody should develop skill sets. And these are the ones that I feel give you the greatest range of expression as a human being. I think, Sharif, same thing. Martial arts will teach you to be a human being.
I'd like to add something quickly to what Randy was saying relative to your question, Rich, about my Sifu would say something very similar that his Sifu said. The physical training is more for the junior level people. Mm-hmm. For the seniors, it's the philosophy.
Yeah.
But the reason why, like, okay, anybody that's been in the gym that's worked hard at least once knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's not, let's say I'm doing push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
and I say I'm going to do 50.
Mm-hmm.
The 50 push-ups don't make me stronger. It's the last 5.
Mm.
Why the last 5? Because those first 45 get you to the limit of your physicality at that moment.
Right.
Okay.
And so now you're forced to use something here.
Right.
Something non-physical to energize the physical body.
Yes,
So
exactly.
X amount of years of doing that, you're expected to be able to now be at least moderately acquainted with that non-physical power source.
Right. You go out of the physical. Right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean you don't become less powerful, by the way.
Right.
Because Xing Yi and Bakwa both teach you
That's right.
you don't have to hit anybody anymore. I just touch them.
There you go.
Xing Yi, right? Or I can just energy with Bakwa.
That's right.
And those are forms in the same way that a meditation or a prayer is.
Yes.
And so when we make all the divisions, we limit our ability to learn, right?
That's right.
It's not a Chinese thing. It's
Right.
Native Americans learn all this too. Some of them used to. The natives in Australia learn it. I mean, it's all over the dang place.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
You know, so much talk about the non-physical versus the physical, and a lot of people say one of the selling points about coming to this realm is the soul gets to experience, like as Bruce Lipton would say, tasting chocolate. So you get to experience the senses. Senses is an amazing experience for the soul. My question to y'all would be, do you think once the purpose of coming to this realm, coming to this school, is to be able to take the senses back from this realm that you mastered in this realm to the spirit realm, so that you could taste chocolate in heaven now and you don't have to come to earth no more? Is that one of the main purposes for coming to this realm? I can now taste chocolate in heaven without coming to planet Earth.
okay, 2 things.
Yes.
Number one, I've died several times and I keep coming back because it's the only place you can get ice cream.
Hey, you know what I'm talking about now. Hey, you know what I'm talking about. There you go.
Yeah. Now, the truth of it is very simple.
Yeah.
When you go to sleep at night, you are absent of all your senses.
That's a fact.
They go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember what I said about your non-human? There's a body laying there, but there's no consciousness present.
Uh-huh.
And it's never been something that you could discuss with people. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we can. We'll call them dreams.
Hello?
And then everybody wants to interpret them. And that's the funniest thing in the world, because it's like somebody telling you what ice cream tastes like. Right? But if you think about, well, if all my senses are absent me, where did they go? Well, and what did they go with? And now we could say, well, we have some consciousness kernel of existence, soul, whatever the hell you want, and we can move it anywhere in the universe. And we know that because we tend to go all over the damn place.
That's right.
And to me, people that dream, basically humans have like what I call favorite destinations, kind of like Disneyland.
That's true.
And some of them are cemeteries and pretty scary.
Yes.
But the idea is that we are a sensual being.
Mm-hmm.
And absent our sensual senses from our being, absent, that's when we're not human, but we're a being. That's for today's purposes, easiest language. And so when we're having our senses, we're not necessarily a being. We're all enamored with all this. They call it Maya, and now we can get into all the Indian religions and everything. But it's real simple to be present with your own senses here,
Yes.
and then to be with your senses over there should be equal. Okay. And that would be true what we call bilocation.
Bilocation.
Or moving yourself. That's true remote viewing. That's what I explained to Russell Tarr. There's no reason to go through some numbered process, right? And some mystery, like we're going to give you 1,000 numbers here and we want you to go to that location. Well, why can't you just tell me it's, 33 and 3rd Street, in New York City.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
It'll be easier to me. I can go there. I don't know about all the number of things, right?
Exactly.
Because I never used them.
Right.
So we go places all the time. So now we get into intentionally going there, and then non-intentional. Non-intentional is drug states, meditative states. You become non-intentional, accepting of whatever comes to you.
Mm.
And we call that, music. We call it art. We call it love. We call it all kinds of things. The acceptance of that which comes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I want to add something to that. In our religious tradition, we teach that exactly the same thing. I love the whole ice cream analogy.
Yeah.
I love it because we say that's what caused the fall of man. All right, there's a particular African tribe, how they'll trap monkeys, right?
Yeah.
This particular monkey likes these little shiny rocks, shiny stones. Yeah. So they'll dig a hole into like a rock face and place those stones there, but they are making sure the monkey's watching.
Yeah.
But the hole is just big enough for the monkey to stick his hand in like this. And then he grabs the rocks, but can't pull his hand back out.
Right.
But he doesn't have the good sense to let the damn rocks go.
Right.
We call that the fall of man. Oh, I got the ice cream. I just can't get out of the hole now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so we have to evolve to the point where we can go, I can get the ice cream anytime I want.
Yeah. I'll go get it.
And I can also, I'm not a slave to the ice cream. There you go. Yeah. I can enjoy the carnal senses on the plane of manifest without falling victim to them.
Exactly. And to answer your question about tasting chocolate here and there, chocolate. When's the last time you ate chocolate? Last week, last month?
About 2 weeks ago.
11 days ago, right? I was checking. So when you had the experience of it, you created a data set. We call it a memory, okay? And the intensity of that memory, you could do it over and over and over to where you really know what the chocolate ice cream is. And when you go to sleep tonight, can you take your senses and re-access the memory that's over here so that you know exactly the same thing about what chocolate tastes like?
Got you.
And you can try that, right?
Randy, we have a training method that does that. But it's dream work, where you're dreaming a particular dream, right?
Right.
You're in a space. You're within that data set. You come out of it, you wake up. The test is, can you re-enter that space?
Yes. Can you go back to the dream?
Yes.
And that's
when,
remember tapping that kid in the class about the daydreaming?
Yes.
I said, I want to know where that is. And so over the years, I've developed what I call a GPS right, of where those experiences and where you go. Because if Tesla went out there and found the whole diagram for the Niagara Falls hydroelectric
generator, that's right,
and did it in a day or two, then I want to be able to go to the same space and see the same drawings he saw.
Come on now.
And I think that would be reasonable. And I think it's a process that humanity is right on the verge of, because there is so much more coming now that we should be able to access. And here's the key to it, just like the difference between going to weightlifting and martial arts. Martial arts is about using your movement, using your training, and being able to employ it in real world situations, we call it, our number one reality. The difference is once you go beyond about 5 or 6 years, you should be able to apply it to zero reality. You should be able to affect change, which is what martial arts does, in a person or in yourself or in your thoughts in the same way that you trained in martial arts.
Come on.
So that's my ideal.
He just gave a big secret to what we do.
Yeah.
Because if you can manipulate the non-physical part of you.
Oh, yeah.
And we live in a field where there's no such thing as empty space.
That's true. That's true.
Then I eventually can manipulate to a degree the non-physical part of someone else.
Yes, yes,
And that
absolutely.
non-physical part is what animates the physical part.
Right. Yeah, we talk about like vibration and frequency and everything. What the hell do you think happens when you use your voice to say hello to anybody?
Come on now.
Yeah, and then what happens when you use your sight?
Yes.
You don't think that we're photonic. You don't think you're affecting a change in that person.
Exactly.
Remember, I see the Bentley and go, woohoo, baby, I like that one, right?
Right.
And then here comes an old wreck of a whatever, and you're like, I don't like that one.
Right.
You are changing the field. You're changing your own field.
That's right.
And so that becomes something that, well, let me take a look at that. Let me learn more. Let me become more talented or more practiced if I'm not talented. Okay.
Correct.
And so the way you do that is through discipline. I mean, that's the first martial art is awareness, and awareness comes through discipline.
Discipline.
And practice, and a dozen others. That's why I developed this program called 10 Sons. 10 Sons is not about punching. It's about everything that happens after you get the physical body to the point that it will do what you want it to do. Like we learn to be able to control ourselves. Our blood pressure, respiration rate, heart rate, drop it all the way down, go into a coma, bring yourself out of it, heat up the body, cool down the body.
Right.
That is where you start literally finding out what it means to have a human body. You know, the physical training we do tells you have a body. And training I teach after that teaches you what to do with it after you've done that.
After you've done that. Right.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Randy, I want to ask you, you mentioned and said the word memory so many times throughout this conversation. I want to ask you, what is the difference between remembering the past and thinking about the future? And the reason why I asked that is because they said every time you remember the past, there's always a slight variation. So you're always being creative when you're thinking about the past. You're never really thinking about exactly how it happened. They said you're always changing the story up just a little bit, a tad bit. This happened, that happened, and there's always just a little change in the story in your mind about what happened in the past. So we're being creative about what happened in the past, and we're being creative about what might take place in the so-called future. What's the difference in creativity between what happened and what we perceive what will happen?
Oh, the past is mutable. Okay, it's mutable. It changes. It deteriorates. Right, and not only that, there's no commonality. Remember that commonality of a group or whatever. You and I go to the movie, and we did not see the same movie. I promise you.
Right.
You know, so, well, if that's true for a movie, what about life? There's no way that you and I saw or experienced the same life. And that has to be okay. Okay. Now, when we look at the future, it's mutable also. Okay. And this gets into a weird thing of really there's no what's called be here now, be present. Ken Keyes back in the 60s, hippie days, right? But there's actually no present. Okay. And so we front run reality like you exist at least 2 or 3 minutes ahead of here. And that's a meditative practice to extend that to 30 minutes an hour, a day, a week. And then we call that remote viewing, only we call it temporal, right? Temporal viewing. So we all have this capacity to view the past. But remember, it's mutable, it's changing because it loses its energy. It loses its, what do they call it? Retina burn. There's an old term when you see something makes your eye go, wow. It's like, so that is apparently normal for humans to actually lose their memory. And I know one thing, my daughter the other day, I was seeing her and she said, "What do you remember about being 12 years old?" And I go, "Nothing." And then I proceeded for the next hour to tell her from the day of my birthday forward, everything that happened, everybody I met, the people I knew, and all this stuff. And I go, I didn't know I remembered that. Now, what I did is I tapped back into the field where all that information was. Right. But I promise you, one of the things of the best healing techniques is like, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, and I don't remember. If you take all the painful events that happened in your life, and this is source of PTSD. PTSD is to take a painful memory and to energize it and to repeat it. And it's like, well, that is just stupid. But most people don't have the skill set to drop it out, drop the energy out, or drop the memory out. And when you drop the memory out, you don't then have the experience of it. So then how'd this scar get here? I don't know, right? I could go look. That's the other thing. I can go retrieve that memory, but it's not extant. It's not interfering with me in life right now, right?
Yeah.
You know, did your mama ever beat you? The answer is everybody. Did your dad beat you? Everybody, right? Yeah. So we now know you're not special. We're just affected by it differently because some people have gotten over it. Right? And so what we would like to do, and what I do and work on people, is let's clear out all of that.
Yeah.
I don't have any negative memories. You know, I get accused of not remembering things. And it's like, I don't want to. Well, I've already been there, done that. Bring another one, right? And of course, you end up with a new scar on your head or somewhere. But
Yeah.
that's how you learn.
But you know what? That sounds just honestly, it sounds like regular house cleaning. It sounds like mental energetic maintenance.
Yeah, yeah. If you're skilled at lifting weights, why wouldn't you be skilled at eliminating those experiences that have caused your body or your mind or soul or spirit to be damaged? Like, why wouldn't you get rid of that damage, right? And what that means is to not be bothered by it anymore. You got over the measles, you got over the chicken pox, you got over your first kiss, you got over, you know, it's like, why not go ahead and extend that to all physical illnesses or mental illnesses or emotional, right? So that becomes the extension of all these things we're talking about is to be able to apply them. And you have to do that by practicing them. You know, most people have never tried all the things we're talking about, right? And it helps to have a teacher. I'll tell you that. Right?
Yes, it does.
Definitely.
They can cut through a lot of years of training that way.
I agree 1,000%. I think that with the internet, I think that one of the dangerous things about the internet is that it has caused people to think that they don't need teachers anymore, and things are just, chaotic as a result of that. They think they don't need piano teachers. They think they don't need people to teach them in the gym how to lift weights. They think, everything's a gift and a curse. So it's beneficial, but at the same time, teachers are extremely necessary in all the fields. Extremely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I differentiate, I say a mentor. And the reason I say a mentor is somebody who's been through it.
Okay, excellent.
Right? And at that point, if you can experience what they've learned and able to transfer, then you can add to it. Okay. So you don't become an acolyte, you don't become a robot of your previous teacher. You become somebody that learned what they knew, able to take it, expand on it, and again serve that to others. Right? That's the ideal. Yeah. Benefit others. Right?
So to start out with the conversation, we were talking about the one of the topics we talked about was the energetic ocean. You talked about the energetic ocean that we lived in. And one of the things you talk about is, if you're into quantum physics, you understand is that everything is vibration. Everything moves. Subatomic particles are in constant movement. And because of the movement, they create energy signatures and energy fields. Yeah. What I want to ask you is that when you think about the axiom as above, so below, if you're into the Hermetic principles, I think about, Randy, and we got to explore these topics, Randy. So I'm gonna ask one of them questions again.
All right.
You think about the dance crazes that sweep the nation occasionally. I know you weren't into TV in the 80s, but there's always dances that come around. Like we could say the Macarena. Hey, Macarena. Macarena. The Running Man. There's different dances that sweep the nation that everybody's doing. What I want to ask you, Randy, is because of the nature of reality and subatomic particles, do you think that we are mimicking the activity of subatomic particles, and maybe what's happening on a subatomic level is influencing what we're doing in the collective consciousness, and this is why everybody gravitates toward, because it's already happening inside of them. So the song becomes popular, the dance becomes popular because it's already going on inside.
Okay.
Wow.
It's developed the Veitenheimer scale 36 to 72, right? And you have the Planck scale of matter that goes down to 36, the smallest particle.
Yeah.
And the Higgs boson's number 34, so there's a couple more they'll come up with.
Yeah.
But what you're dealing with from 3672 is fields.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So everything you're talking about, vibration and frequency, that's all field language. Okay. And so if you think about the movement has to come from the field first. That's it. So no particle vibrates or has a frequency or an existence unless it has a presence in the field first. And that scale, I've laid it out to what each one of those numbers means, 36, 70, whatever, as a way to interpret, how much energy can go into somebody creating a dance, right? It's like, can't touch this.
Right.
Can't touch this. Like that was a dance, that
Right.
I think I still have a pair of those pants.
Whoa!
Yeah, I tried to put them on one time, and it's like I came around and freaked them out, right? And I said, "No, I got me some, man, parachute pants." So the idea is that you took a frequency, right, which we would call music, let's say. That's a vibration. There's no physicality to it until you put it into something, a musical instrument, a human body, right? And once you start doing that, you can't help but dance. And so we know this from two things. The dancing Wu Li masters, you can look it up, right? And you can look up Sufi dancing. And anybody that has never had a spiritual experience, go do Sufi dancing for about 2.5 hours. And I promise you, you'll be somewhere else in the universe other than right here. Okay. And of course, everybody denigrates those. Those are thousands of years old. So this knowledge is not something new. No. It just represents your not expansive enough to go exploring what some of the stuff that already existed. It was all based on fields, energy fields. And of course, like the Sufi dancing, I loved it because all of a sudden 100 people, and no, there's no 100 people no more. We're actually in the field at that point. And so there's a form of Bhangra, there's a form of India dancing. The Native Americans do stomp dancing, is what we used to call it. And that rhythmic hitting on the heels is transmit energy into the earth. You get a reciprocal energy flow, and then we call it Kundalini rising. That's common to all societies. So when you talk about the dancing, all dancing is raising a Kundalini energy. Right? And so, and that's why some are more popular than others. Can't touch this.
There you go. We got ready to dance. No, Sheree, we got ready to dance. We won. We won. We ain't never done. We won. Ready to dance. There we go. All right, I won. Hey, Randy.
Yeah. Don't forget your roots.
That's right.
There you go. Yo, Randy, Sharif, I want to ask y'all this. I don't know if I asked you this before, Sharif, and I want to ask Randy, and You can chime in if you want, Sharif.
Sure.
In terms of the portals, because Sharif stressed to me about how you deal with the portal technology. Missing people have been a big topic of discussion in this country and in this world. Do you think, and people often associate missing people with sex trafficking. Do you think that we give too much credence to sex trafficking and not enough to portals, or them just maybe leaving and going into another dimension? Do you think possibly these missing people aren't being going that direction, but going and walking in the portals, or just possibly leaving this realm?
Well, we could ask, how many people leave the earth through portals every year? Maybe 300,000's all. Okay. So this is where we're really going to get in trouble. Okay. The certain way of looking at the universe says that anybody that does anything with anybody else, one person had to agree to it.
Woo! Come on now.
Yeah. And so now,
Wow.
actually, both people had to agree.
Wow.
Well, this gets into all the karma stuff you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, somebody killed somebody. Somebody had to agree to be killed, and somebody had to agree to kill them. And so it gets into what we call the Judas paradox, right? Who was worse, right? The person that got killed, or the person that did the killing, right?
Right.
And so it's not something people usually want to talk about because it freaks them out too bad.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I had a PhD in physics that was one of my friends growing up.
Mm-hmm.
He thought I was pretty stupid, but eventually revised that a little bit. He had about a 168 IQ, so and I'm a little under that. So anyway, what he and I were discussing one day is, well, if you take gravity of the moon and take gravity of the earth, the idea that there might be a null point where they would cancel each other out. And if you stood on that null point, you're out of here at like hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. I mean, I don't know how fast, but you would no longer be on the surface of the earth. So we called that a portal. Okay. And this is something when I was a teenager, we get big arguments about this because he said that point wanders around the earth. Right. And so now you have people that were disappeared. Right. They disappeared. Now, well, that's a gravitational anomaly, we'll call it. Now there's magnetic anomalies. That's the geomagnetic of the earth. Well, most people when they talk about earth portals are talking about geomagnetic. And I've been to some of those, and they're the weirdest things in the world. That's until you've gone through one. Now, the problem is they're no longer as energetic as they once were for whatever reasons. Okay. So like the one in New Mexico, I mean, I could drive right to it. It was about 30 feet wide, and you start this way, and by the time you got 30 feet away, you were facing like 90 degrees another direction. And then you walk back, and east is east again or something, and then the air was different, and the feel of things was totally different because it was a geomagnetic anomaly. Now the strength of that on a 1 to 10 is a 1. So if we look at that, is there any in the United States? Well, there's some 3s still out there, which would probably mess with your head a little bit. And this gets into the idea of like, there's a place on the earth, let's say, where you can be somewhere else, just like in remote viewing, or a place in your conscious somewhere else, not of your own volition. And just by being there, you're changed. Okay. And this is where the idea would come up with the sacred. Okay. And sacred should really be translated as scary. Okay. just so you know, if we're going to get in trouble on all this, right?
Right.
But so that's the idea that there's electrical portals, geomagnetic. There's gravitic. Now that gets into a whole. That's the one I started with. Was a gravitic portal, and the other thing happened like 20 years later. Dr. Jan and I were up in Alaska, and you know the nights go on forever, right, or days. And I said, well, let's just. I carry notebooks, right? I said, let's just figure out this whole anti-gravity thing. So we figured out that we could generate an electromagnetic field and offset it with another one, and we would have anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity.
Yeah.
Very simple. We came up with how much, machinery and how much energy to do that, and everything penciled out because he was real big on the formulas and stuff. And I was like, no, we just need to change the angle and stuff on it, and there we go, right? So everybody's like, ooh, it's a mystery. No, it's not. It's just some basic knowledge of how all this stuff works. And so Planck doesn't get you there. But the Veitenheimer scale of 3672, you can go there. You can go to the frequency and the vibration and the energy state. And from that energy state or quantum energy state, and then the other language is quantum energy state entanglement, and that's my language. What you're going to derive from that is the ability to comprehend and to calculate and calibrate basically everything going on in the universe. Right? Everything from karma to whatever all shows up in that other scale. Right?
Randy, could you do me a favor for the audience and for Rich? Yeah. Could you speak to, since we're kind of on this topic, can you speak to the incident where you took one of your old Native American principles regarding time and sectioning time?
Oh, yeah.
And then experimented with it, took out a few sections,
right?
Wrote up an algorithm to represent that.
You're right.
Built a little contraption and put it in your vehicle.
You're right.
All right.
Yeah.
I think you took a road trip and you got there super fast or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I gotta hear it. Yeah, I want to hear this. Please tell this. Thank you, Sharif, bringing that up.
I'm at a conference in the '90s, early '90s. I finally started looking for people to talk to, and Russia has done so much more research and much more open about what they've done than we are. Mm-hmm. All we hear about is SRI and Monroe Institute, and I promise you, they have got things going on. Dr. Konstantin Karatkov was one of my friends, and he was the only one I could get that I could talk to or explain things to, because we were on the same track. Mm-hmm. So at that conference, I told a group of scientists, I said, well, time, space is aspected in 8 aspects. And time is aspected in 19. And don't forget the reciprocals. Right? So if you have 8, you have 8 back to 1, 19. Now, by doing that, what we've set up is what's called spatial and temporal markers. Remember what I said, a GPS for where to go to? Yeah. Where Tesla got his information, or I laugh at all the people who are trying to do AI. All the information is available. You just haven't got it yet.
Right.
You didn't go there. Right.
Right.
So the idea, once you have temporal and spatial markers, hey, I'm driving to Dallas. How far is it? Well, a little road sign, I'll say 191 miles or something. And, 10 minutes later, it says 189 miles or 195. You know which direction you're going. So temporal and spatial markers have direction. Yeah. And once you have all that, now you have something you can play with. So to answer your question, what I did, driving down the road, I said, well, why do I have to travel through 8 aspects of space? It's a very simple thing, right?
Oh, God, wow.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Why do I have to do that? And from an egotistic or exploratory consciousness, I go, why don't I just eliminate a few of them, right? Why? I always drive to California because it's empty and you can think. But there's hundreds of miles of nothing. So what's the difference between this nothing and that nothing? And I go, well, there's a whole lot of space there. Why don't I just kick out some of it? Okay. And so I did. I got rid of 3 and 5, and the next thing I know, from Oklahoma City to Shreveport, Louisiana is 408 miles on the road I trek through Dallas. I left at 7:31 in the evening, and 11:15 I was in Shreveport. And people say, you can't do that. And I go, I did that. I had the phone calls I kept for a long time. I called my daughter I was leaving, and I called her when I got there. Okay. Now, to go 4 hours and 400 miles in a car on the roads is not consistent with science.
Right. It defies science.
It's a lot of science.
Yes.
And so, remember Dr. Jan, my physicist, he said, explain this to me. I said, okay, this is what you do. And he was in Denver and drove to Oklahoma City, which is, let's say, 8 or 9 hours. And it took him 5.5. And I can get about 33% improvement right now. And because it's just something I play with. I mean, I haven't tried to extend it to 100%. Let's say. That's true by location.
Right.
But he came back to me and he was yelling at me. And I said, what are you yelling about? He goes, I did what you said. I transported myself from here to here. It took 5.5 hours instead of 9 hours. And he said, I had a terrible headache. And in Oklahoma, we say, if you're not catching any fish, we say you're holding your mouth wrong. So that's what I told him.
Hey, Randy, I want to ask you. That story is so interesting, and this is how we learn. The closest thing I could think about when I hear that story is when I was younger, and I made a trip from Atlanta back to New York, and I was driving, and I was extremely angry at something my uncle did, and I wanted to get the hell out of Atlanta and go to New York, and I made it back to New York in record-breaking time.
Right.
So what I want to ask you is, how much does anger or frustration factor into the equation of what you're talking about? Because when people get frustrated or angry, they find a way to do shit that they just can't find a way to do when they're calm, and they always tell us to be calm. But sometimes when you're angry or frustrated, you just like, I had enough of this, and you just do it. So how much does that play into that equation?
Well, you kicked yourself out of number one reality.
That's right.
You say that again? You what?
You kicked yourself out of number one.
You kick yourself out.
You kicked yourself out. Remember, the anger and everything takes over, and it gets into what's called reality distortion fields.
Yeah.
Okay. And gets into what I call reality interfaces. I mean, this is stuff I've done years of research, and we could spend hours on each of them. But basically, you're kicking yourself over into your presence is not coherent exactly in this universe. How's that? Or this reality.
Yeah.
Right. So you go to decoherence.
Yeah.
And decoherent state is the same thing as saying I'm in a dream state.
Right.
Not quite physical. Okay. And you can go back and forth. And so what I was learning to do was to go back and forth between spatial markers and temporal markers, and actually do that consciously. You were doing it non-consciously, and the anger and the energy kicked you out of all the other programs you had going on. Right. And so your focus comes down to just driving down the road and getting the hell out of town. And you are having a temporal effect or a spatial effect. We know that because people that are really, really angry, you don't want to be around them.
Right.
Why? The space changes.
Yep.
Everybody says the energy changes. No, space changes, I promise you. That's why we weren't allowed to fight with anger.
That's right.
We get the blood beat out of us, right?
Right.
Wow.
So,
Rich, it's a super energy state. It's you and I have talked about this before, right? Music, dance, chanting, all these types of things are methods of achieving a particular high energy state that can pop you out of what Randy would call,
Right.
number one reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Somebody in the chat mentioned the Incredible Hulk with anger.
yeah. What's the one, Dr. Strange?
Yeah.
Yeah, Doctor Strange. Yeah.
And she does what I call a bakwa technique, wham, and knocked him out of his body.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of know that trick.
Oh man. Man.
So then we don't think about, well, I knocked myself out.
Right.
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 I often wondered what this was, and I think it's an attempt to knock you out of some of these other realms you get off into and bring you back into reality.
Right.
Mm.
And reality is great entertainment. I got to tell you, it's yeah.
Ain't it?
But there's a whole hell of a lot happening over there.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what's going on over there.
Yes. Yes.
So,
What does your culture, Randy, teach about reincarnation? Is that something that you don't mind experiencing? And I ask that because a lot of people in the so-called New Age community, they're like, I do not want to come back to this realm. Hell no. What does your culture teach about coming back to this realm, Randy?
well, the implication is the ego saying I have a choice.
Ooh,
Right?
woo.
Go right down sometime. And then the implication of my choice becomes extent in the universe. In other words, that's the way reality is going to be. I have a different opinion of reincarnation. I think if you lead a life, and probably Elon Musk and some of these guys agree with me, I should be able to download that into a nice little set of CDs, let's call it. Remember data, right?
Yeah.
And if I have all that data, which is almost impossible because each one of our cells has consciousness, and I don't think there's a computer that big in the world.
Right.
So, let alone the memory storage that exists within our own DNA and everything. But the idea is that if that exists, right, that data set from when I was, let's say I was a martial artist in Japan in the 1700s. Can I access that data set? The answer is yes, right? Does it have to be mine? The answer is no. Okay. So when you access a data set, it's set theory is another whole book I write. But the idea is you can access that, and the reality of it is the same as you saw a movie or read a book or all these other things. It depends on how dense the data density comes into play, and we get up all into that. So what I'm saying is the total amount of data density for that whole lifetime is this big, and when you do reincarnation thinking or experiencing, you're only getting a very small part. Okay, very few people are able to go into and just like now I'm sitting in the middle of Arizona, and I can tell you the heat and humidity and the colors of the sky. And I mean, I can fill out the data density to the point that I'm there. So reincarnation really is either you're tapping into your own or tapping into somebody else's memory field. And so what we have is a lot of shared memory fields. I learned this working at a mental hospital because we had 2 Jesus Christ, 4 George Washingtons, and 5 Cleopatras, and a couple of others, right? Now, what that means is that data set was available to those people. Remember, they maybe not quite right in the head.
Right.
I think there's a song about that. But anyway, they were accessing a data set that supplanted their own. So they took an identity, right?
Wow.
And the identity was one that they weren't born with. And that's another thing I check on people. Right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about different presidents of the United States or anything.
Yeah.
See, there's all kinds of ways to get in trouble with all
this.
I'm telling you. I just got a couple of more questions. We're about to hit the 2-hour mark. I definitely appreciate your time, Randy. I mean, a great, amazing conversation tonight. What I want to ask you, I mentioned the term ley lines earlier, Randy, and dragon lines and ley lines are terms that are used interchangeably in certain esoteric circles to describe invisible energy pathways. So I want to know, what can you tell us about dragons according from your, everybody brings a different perspective or different light energy or a different piece of knowledge. I want to know, what does Randy Veitenheimer think about? We hear so much about dragons and they've been demonized. What can you tell us about dragons and these invisible energy pathways that are powerful locations?
I wish I'd wrote that book, How to Train Your Dragon, but
I'm telling
you. Excuse me.
Indeed.
Allergies a little bit.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to you or even thinking about somebody, I'm creating an energetic pathway. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's a photonic pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And so science comes up and says so many pixels, and we can get into the whole science part of it. But at some point, it's strictly how you receive information and energy. In this case, energy. So the idea is that you can set up a pathway for energy to flow, and it can be between, let's say, dissimilar metals. We call that a battery. Okay. Well, if you take a look at the composition of the Earth, as an example, the Great Pyramids, all those are built over water. All of them had red granite underneath, and then they had water. And that creates, through the crystalline structure, vibration, creates energy, creates electron flow. So the idea, you could have a metal deposit, let's say in Colorado, and then have a silicon deposit somewhere else, and you would actually get energy flow between those two. Mm-hmm. So that's where we get the idea of as above, so below, or over here and over there. So once you set up that energy flow, in humans, we call it a neural pathway. Okay. And so the idea of ley lines, well, I have them in my own body. We call them meridians.
Meridians, yeah.
So if I have meridians in my own body, why wouldn't I have meridians in the earth?
Correct.
Okay? And the thing about those is, like, our von Schumann frequency was supposed to be 7.8, let's say. It's been in the thousands and all over the place. You can go look this up on the internet, von Schumann frequency. And what that says, the Earth is sitting there doing this at 7.8 hertz or whatever the number is. And it's all over the place right now. And what that means is that there's energy coming in and being distributed around the Earth. And in the process, it's literally creating neural pathways. Okay, we're going to call them ley lines. And if you go stand on one, you can tell, okay, if you have any sense at all. Like the ones in Sedona are very disorienting. They call them vortexes there, right? And Native Americans never lived there, by the way, whatever they say. Because I grew up there as a kid. I was there at 5 years old in Sedona area and stuff. I lived on the reservation in Arizona. But anyway, so that's your ley lines. Now, dragon lines is the language from China. It's interesting because the idea that you would build a house, which is where we get the term feng shui, you would actually build on places where the energy was benevolent. That's a key.
Yes.
And what that means is not too intense and not too weak, right? It's the three bears routine. So Goldilocks. So I've done feng shui. I've taught feng shui. And the idea is just to be able to sense energy. Well, you do that when you walk in a room, right? And so feng shui becomes a way to interact with ley lines and dragon energy and all this stuff.
Randy, if you want to get water, I was about to say, take a water break. You get some water because we chilling over here.
Oh man,
we vibe over here. We
right.
just, take your time.
Okay. So
minute break. You know,
the thing about, in in Silom Kung Fu,
Yes.
5 animal style, right?
Mhm.
I studied that for many years.
Mm.
And the ideal was that you would mimic the movements of certain animals to learn how they move. But really, you're tapping into how energy flows into that entity,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
animal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to learn the same thing if you learn to fight properly. You're going to learn how energy's flowing into that other person.
Wow.
And be
Right.
able to take advantage of it or not.
Wow.
What I like about the Chinese is they took the concept of dragon energy as a place where you could build something and accumulate that energy.
Yes.
Now, the problem becomes is you have to be trained to deal with that energy.
Correct.
Okay.
Way beyond most people. It's like the Ark of the Covenant. Those priests had to be trained to deal with that much energy.
That's right.
Okay? So what the Chinese did was not only develop those areas. I mean, I can identify them on a map. I just poke them, where all the places are. Now, are they electromagnetic? Are they gravitic? Are they where energy's flowing into our ionosphere and the heliosphere of the Earth, and therefore has a grounding point? Normally, we call that lightning. See, so that would lightning actually kind of represents the idea of dragon energy. Okay.
Correct.
There are dragon societies on this earth that basically is the number 3 control mechanism of all the societies or countries. Gold dragon, black dragon, red dragon, white dragon. They don't want you to know much about that, right? They don't want you to know how powerful they are because they've been in existence for thousands of years. Okay. Right. And you don't accumulate that much power without doing something with it. So another one of those secrets you're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
But we get, like, if you start with feng shui, you end up with ley lines. If you end up with ley lines, you end up with dragon. You see what I mean? It's like you just keep expanding it, and you can start explaining a whole lot of phenomena that goes in the world. All of this occurs on the Veitenheimer scale. None of it occurs in physical science. None of it occurs in particle physics. That's all like, no, right?
Right.
This is the source of it. My scale is because you can identify it. Remember, like we segment time and space.
Right.
So it's the same thing. Once you have that scale, you can start assigning information to each one of those 36 or 72 and get a real good picture of what's going on any place on earth and with any people. Okay. So all the information's available. Now, once you learn to interact with that energy and control it, now you can control space and time.
Right.
And that's where we are. Science has finally come up with, oh my God, we can control space and time. Yeah, well, it's been going on for a long time. Y'all just kind of new to the game.
That's a fact.
Because you're scientists, right?
Right.
And like I said, they never asked me, or I would explain it to them.
Wow. Hey, Sharif, Randy talking his shit, man. Randy talking.
I told you.
One of my favorite quotes is like, somebody asked me one time, well, what do you know about E.T.? And I said, they never ask us Indians what we know. We've been around for 10,000 years. We might have a little information, right? Instead, they get some guy that goes, I was out on the hill and saw E.T., right? Yeah. All societies, cultures in the world have traditions of all this, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
You'll listen.
Never ask us, right? Because they want science to explain.
Scientists to explain, yeah.
Well,
so they can get the credit. Yeah.
Worst religion in the world is science.
Rich.
Yeah.
One time I think of the time I interviewed Randy on my page a while back. I was talking about, I think I led with the question about extraterrestrials and communication with extraterrestrials, right? His response was very similar to this. Know what he said?
Mm.
He said, what qualifies somebody to talk to an extraterrestrial when they can't talk to plants and they can't talk to animals?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'll tell you what, like language, like popular right now is non-human intelligence, NHI, right? Well, what the hell do you think a plant is, or a dog or a cat?
Non-human
They're
intelligence.
non-human intelligence, near as I can tell. And then they get these people like, well, if ET came here, take me to your leader, who are you going to get to interface with them?
Mm.
And that's where all these people stand up and go, I'm a galactic ambassador or some crap. You know, and I go, they should get me. At least
Right.
I can talk to the animals and talk to the
Man,
and you know, might be even able to talk to girls. I don't know.
yo, this dude is funny. You wouldn't tell me he should read this dude. I see you, Randy. I see you. Yo, but you know what? And it's good to have a good time while we're learning.
Yes.
I was watching you and Guy one day, Randy, right? This was like a couple of days ago, matter of fact. And and it's very interesting. You were talking about communicating with, I guess, an animal you've seen or something. And you were like, when you mimicked it, it was like, wait a minute. I think it was a bird. The bird was like, wait, the bird looked at you like, and it's crazy because with my daughter, she just turned 6 months. I talk, but sometimes I'll make the same sound she makes. And when she goes, huh, and I go, she looks at me like, oh shit. I
got you. I got you.
So that mimicking, talk to us about mimicking the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, or babies or whatever, and how what does that do?
It's the first formal training we have in communication.
Yeah.
First formal.
Yeah.
My favorite one is I would go out in my backyard and there would see this squirrel. I was over in one tree, like 40, 50 feet away. And it would make these noises like.
That's what it was, a squirrel. Yeah.
Hear them, right? And so I would sit there and try to mimic the sounds. And I didn't think much about it, but eventually I got it right enough that it come running over to me. Right 3 feet away. And so we went back and forth. I would go outside and it would come running up to me. And because obviously I must be one of them.
Wow. Yeah.
See? So the second thing that happened is we would chatter back and forth because all I'm doing is trying to mimic, right? And I don't know if it's asking for more pecans or what, but I'm just in the game.
Right.
And then one day I'll go out and I could always have a sense of if something's looking at me or whatever. It's called a proximity sense, martial arts thing. And I felt somebody staring at me and I turned around and that squirrel was literally right here.
Wow.
And it had a baby with it. And it brought that baby to see me.
Baby.
Wow.
And I started clicking at it and it would click back and forth too.
Wow.
Now, the crazy part is I go to DC, 1,000 miles away, and I see these gray squirrels, which are not the red squirrels. And I did the same clicking. They come right up and sit on my lap. They think I'm one of them. So back to your child, you ever notice that like children under, let's say, 2.5 feet tall, as soon as they see another child under 2.5 feet tall, they run up to them. Why? There's one of me there, right? So how do you talk to plants? How do you talk to animals? Well, just be one of them, right? And if you do it really well, we'll call you a Swiftie.
Give me an example of what being an animal would look like, Randy. Give me an example of what being an animal would look like. Let's say
it's not about how you look. It's like can you communicate with them? It's the idea of being human again. Right? It's if you communicate to humans, you're human. If you communicate to animals, you're kind of cracked in the head, right? So,
Mm.
but if you communicate with them properly, which means dialogue, which is the next thing that happens after mimicry, now you've opened up a two-way communication.
Mm.
They can talk to you. And that's why we say the primary thing to do in any communication with any person, place, or thing, and that becomes critical, person, place, or thing, is to be able to listen to it. And that's a Native American skill that we teach.
In some cultures, that's called shapeshifting.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Wow. Wow.
so if you mimic your baby first and then, move on up the line with it, right? So,
Yes. Hey, look, like I said, a couple of more questions I got because I don't want to. It's 2 hours. I don't want to keep Randy here all night. It's 11 o'clock at night. I really appreciate this interview. A couple of more. One question, Randy. We mentioned Tesla early in the interview, and sure. Tesla would get these downloads at night, and he'd be like, I forgot exactly. I think he said something just wrote it. I don't know if he did automatic writing or exactly what happened. But my question to you would be: they talk about the witching hour, certain coaches, where at 3 a.m, it's magic time. You get all these creative ideas. Randy, from your knowledge and your information, is it better to get these downloads from this energetic ocean, as you call it, while you're awake? Or is it better to get it while you're sleeping, fully download it while you're sleeping?
It's remember positive, negative, and neutral?
Yes.
So the esoteric literature calls it the transition times. It's before dawn and at sunset. So those are the times where the world shifts, or the universe shifts, or consciousness, or reality, or whatever you want to call it. But the other thing, Curtis, remember I used to get up at 3:45 every morning, take a cold shower, do a yoga, an hour of meditation, an hour of yoga, hour of meditation. It's like I teach people in meditation that all meditations are equal, because the only thing in a meditation is to get to the end of it. At the end of any meditation, for about 1 to 3 minutes, you have clarity and connection to the whole universe. Anything you want to know is available there. Okay. And so it requires a little bit of training, but you can become really, really good at knowing. And that's kind of what I'm teaching now. Knowing is the future of humanity, not believing, not trusting, not all these things that have gotten us in trouble. Okay.
Yeah, Randy, you're gonna have a lot of people reach out to you at the end of this show, man.
That's a fact.
You have a whole lot of people. The gems you've been dropping tonight. All right, so like I said, a couple of more questions before we got here. Next question. Another thing you talk about, Randy, is the importance of being authentic. What I want to ask you is that I hear what you're saying, I hear what everybody's saying, and I think it's magnificent about being authentic. But a lot of people don't even know who they are to even begin the process of being authentic. We've been lying to ourselves our whole lives. So how do you even begin to discover who you are in the first place to be authentic?
Okay. I have a certain skill set.
Yes.
And what I found out is that most people are not themselves. And Dr. David Hawkins talks about it. He said the majority of humanity runs around 2% to 5% consciousness. So if you think about, I'm Randy, but I'm only 2% myself. Well, that's all I have to give or engage with in love or work or jobs or anything else. And so we can have its absence, or we can have a confluence of other consciousnesses and programs and entities and everything else that keeps us from realizing our own existence. So one of the things I can do and do with every client is the first thing is reset them to be 100% themselves. And that's a skill set I've developed and learned to energetically do, no matter where they are on the planet. And I've got thousands of examples of that. And the reason I know that is because their voice shifts, their body shifts, and their energy flow shifts once I put them back into that state. Now, historically, up to about 5 or 6 years old, you're 100% yourself. And after that, unless you do all the meditations or the secret martial arts stuff, you're not going to get back to yourself until like time to die. So the ability to go through the world as 100% yourself is probably the greatest gift you could ever give yourself. And do the meditations or exercises or call me. And we start that process. And it's not just to reset you one time. It's to get you to where you maintain that new state of being. And as an example, I did a lecture in Virginia a few years ago, 300-something people. And I found 3 people that were 100% themselves. And they were people that I hadn't worked on.
Wow.
So, and every one of them had done 20 or 30 years of martial arts or yoga or meditation.
Wow.
So unless you're doing that, or unless you call me, you're generally not running 100% yourself. I'm not going to calibrate you on air tonight, right? But anybody, you tell me their first name and I'll tell you what percentage self.
Rich.
Yeah.
Does it in a few seconds. All he's got to do is hear the person give their first name.
That's it. Yeah, it's instant.
Randy, you got to do me right. Randy, my name is Richard. First name Richard. Let me know. Calibrate me.
Okay, most people run 2 to 5%. You're running 71%. Okay, which is incredible.
Say that again.
You're running 71%. You're 90% available, which is incredible because most people are closed up. Okay. You have 15 inputs. That's acupuncture. Those are meridian flows. You should have about 28. The voltage is around 30 volts, which is high for this time of day. So in martial arts, I'll give an example. I was taught through one of my teachers. I went into the ring with 100.
Jesus? How you know all this?
Energy, right? I went in with 36 volts energy like anybody else. I'm wound up.
Yeah.
Turn around, one deep breath, I'm at 40 volts. Turn around, go back in the fight. Turn around, one deep breath, I'm at 100 volts, 1,000 volts, 4,000 volts. Nobody even get in the ring with me when I was at 4,000 volts. It's just your energy feels so dense that they're not going to, there's no way, because all you got to do is just hold your hand up. That's Bakwa, the power of Bakwa insignia.
Yep.
Randy,
you can manifest that.
Randy,
so same energy to override your consciousness and your energy field.
That's right.
That's what I do.
That's right.
Randy, you did that.
You call me, I'll reset you. All right.
Randy, you did that so fast. I hold up. Let's rewind that real quick, Randy. Hold up. I'm like, what the fuck? I never heard nothing like Randy. That was very fast. Hold up now. Because you gave how did you notice this fast? What do you
because it's accessing the field. All right.
Do you see it? You hear it? You feel it?
How do you know it? If I ask you your name, you know your name. You didn't go through any process. There's no lag time. There's no latency in the information and the expression of it, right? In martial arts, we learn it as the punch should have happened before the idea of the punch.
Before the idea.
Yeah.
Correct.
You should hit before you thought about it.
Right.
So I know things instantly, right? You know, say your first name and hold on a moment. Everybody listen to the tone of his voice, all right?
Go ahead, Rich.
You want me to say?
Yeah, Richard, go ahead.
Say my first name?
Just say your first name.
Yeah, Richard.
Hold on. Now say your first name.
Now say it.
Now say your first name.
Richard.
You not hear the difference?
Huge difference.
100% self, 100% available, 31 inputs, 70 volts. Your energy field went from 4 feet to 11 feet. I can check all that. Right?
Wow. Damn.
Now, that information is available. Everybody should be able to pick up on it. They do actually, but they don't know how to express it in like a formula like I use. Right?
You know what's interesting? Just something that happened within my consciousness.
See how his voice shifted though?
Yes.
Yeah.
As you were doing that, Randy, something that shifted the way I viewed you, and maybe you could just touch on it real quick. And you know what, I'm not going to keep us too much longer. But as you were doing this, automatically when I looked at you, if you can't see it because you're not looking at the camera, but the picture frame behind you looks like you have horns coming out your head. So when you started doing that, I immediately noticed the horns coming out of your head. Now I don't know what the natives or the ancient cultures say about horns in particular with meditation, but I see horns represented in a lot of paintings and sculptures and in the stone. But I noticed the horns when you started doing that. So I just wanted to point that out, Randy.
Yeah,
it looks like it's connected to you, man.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, the idea is you would connect to your etheric field right about here.
Right there, yeah.
And there's whole meditations I teach for what I call this area.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't think about interacting with your energy field. That gets into a whole thing, and they're very simple things, but
man,
you can learn to sense it. We do, right?
Sharif, I knew this. You said this was going to be good. I know this is going to be this good. This show.
I told you.
I know it was going to be this good.
This is a big fun to me. So
I told you.
Hey. Last question before we get out of here. No, two more questions. I want to ask you real quick a question. Just me personally, Randy. I just started getting into the spirit of tobacco. And I want to ask you, what can you tell myself and the people about engaging in tobacco ceremonies or smoking tobacco, something that has been demonized so much because of cigarettes and all the chemicals that are currently being placed in it? What can you tell us about tobacco, my brother?
Well, I'm not big into what's called sacrificial religions.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of tobacco was a gift, a sacrificial gift. Remember, we'd burn it up.
Yeah.
Right? Judaism has that too with animals. But we would make an offering, right? Now, the spirit world doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anything in the physical realm. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the idea in tobacco ceremonies, Native American, was the smoke would carry your prayers.
Yeah, it's like a carrier. It's a carrier.
So it was symbolic of the smoke rising up into heaven.
Right.
So when the white man came, they took a look at the tobacco and they started what we call abusing it. They had no ceremony to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to tell people, if you smoke, really take the time to smoke. I think people that do cigars do that better. They go through a ritual. They take the time, right? That's different than, 30 of them a day or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Because all they're doing is, we say, polluting the body. They're not deriving really a spiritual experience through that. So the idea of all ingestibles or inhalables is that you would absent the consciousness to the point you could experience a different reality. All right? That's it. So the other thing, remember, you give meaning to things.
Yeah.
Tobacco is just tobacco, right? Mm-hmm. But as a plant spirit, that's a whole nother game if you want to play with it. Right?
Indeed.
Oh, write a book about it.
And last question before we get out of here, Randy. I don't. Have you ever heard of the movie The Truman Show?
Yeah.
Okay, so just thinking about The Truman Show and thinking about, they say life is a movie, life is a TV show. What does Shakespeare say, Sharif? They say what? Life is a what?
Life is a dream.
No, Shakespeare. What does Shakespeare say? Life is a play or something. They say when they refer to Shakespeare, I forget. But life being this sort of television show that we're sort of immersed in, like life is a stage. Yeah, life is a stage. That's it. Life is a stage. Life being this Truman Show, like the movie that Jim Carrey starred in. If we observe the principles of as above, so below, and we call life a movie, we call life a TV show, we call life a stage, we call life whatever. This when we watch movies, we have something called cable television where there's premium channels. Now you have to pay extra to engage in them channels. So if in this reality, if we want to, y'all know where I'm going. That's what I like. They already know where I'm going before I finish that content. You gotta love this shit. If we engage in these premium channels in this reality, how do we pay for this? With our human avatar, I look, the smile on his face says says it all. Go ahead, Randy.
Number one is
Wow.
reality only exists as far as you can touch. That's number one reality.
There you go.
Now, you can extend it to how far you can see or hear. Okay, remember, it's all sense reality.
Yeah.
But as soon as you close your eyes, that reality doesn't exist. Okay, I promise. Close your eyes, all this disappears. Right. The only thing that you should be aware of is maybe gravity. I can put you into a meditative state where you can experience all this. But here's the key: the only thing we pay anything in the world for or with is attention.
That's right.
I knew you was gonna say that. I knew.
That's it. So to be your authentic self is to be able to pay attention 100%. That's how it works. Right?
Woo! What a way to end this show tonight. Amazing. Randy, come on. You gonna have the people banging down your door. How can we get in contact with you? Is King Simon still? Oh, well, King Simon is sharing Randy's information in the chat. His Instagram and Linktree. But tell the people how they can contact you also, Randy.
Okay.
How can they contact you?
Energy Doctor, spelled with a K. ENERGYDOKTOR at me.com. That's my email. Okay. My phone number is 202-943-9560. People call me, I answer the phone if I have time, right? But I generally get back with people because people have questions, right? And so those are two primary. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Messenger and all that other stuff. If you really want my attention, go to Zelle or PayPal, and I'll definitely call you back. You have to throw that in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really don't sell anything. I work on people, about an hour program, and then a follow-up's included, where I reset and everything I can find that's going on with a person. And I can tell you thousands of stories. But anyway, that's the idea, just like what I did with you, is reset that energy field and let you have a better life, have a different life, right?
There you go.
And so those are the primary. I wander around the country all over the place, depending on what day of the week it is, depends on where I am. And, I'm open to working with people. So that's the idea.
Say the number one more time so my moderator can write it in the chat. What's the number, Randy?
Energy Doctor, spelled with a K, at me.com. And phone number 202-943. Is that right?
943. Yeah. Can you get this 202? Go ahead, Randy. Go ahead.
Just let me look it up because
we just want to get it right.
I don't ever call myself.
Right.
So,
also too, for the audience, Brother Rich too, I'm gonna be on the next Tuesday. I'm gonna be on King Simon. Yeah, yes, sir.
Excellent.
Just a second, almost there.
Take your time, Randy. Take your time, man.
Okay, it's 202-904-9560. 202-904-9560.
All right. I don't know if King got that, but I did post it 202-904-9560.
Yeah, and Energy Doctor, spelled with a K. That's important.
Hey, Randy, why do you, when I think of, maybe it's my programming, Randy, I want to ask you this. Maybe it's the programming from the English language.
Right.
But when I think about K, like you spell doctor with a K, you think of like I think of the word kill. And when I think of C, I think of the word cure. So in terms of like healing, what would make you choose to spell it with a K that for some reason K just sounds more aggressive to some of us because of what it's associated with instead of C.
Well, it's real simple. Witch doctor was already taken. So I'm like, oh my God, witch doctor's already taken. What am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So when I started, to call yourself a doctor would get you in jail.
That's right.
Okay.
So I looked at that and said, well, I'm a DOKTOR.
Excellent.
German spelling.
Excellent.
And that beats the heck out of Quandero and Medicine Man and all these other things. So people have connotations that go along with those. And so who the heck knows what a doctor spelled with a K is, you know? And my last name is German, so
yeah.
So I came up with that, golly, in the 90s or 80s, I think. They first started bringing people to me, and they said, well, what do you want? And I go, I don't know, energy doctor, right? So, but like I said, it came about because the C would get you in trouble.
Right, gotcha.
I am not a doctor. I have studied medicine for about 50 years. I've studied American medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. I've studied Native American medicine. I've studied Chinese medicine for an equal amount of time, particularly medical Qigong therapy, Qigong. And that's what I practice. That's where I learned a lot of this, right? So, and all that's available to study and learn. So, right? So,
hey, with that being said, Sharif, any last words before we get out of here, brother?
No, I'm just very happy to introduce my, my big brother Randy to the community, and have him on your show, man. You want to, I've told you guys before, I'm a firm believer that nobody's out of reach, but also too, I mean, you don't want to hoard information or hoard access either.
Right. Yeah. But I appreciate you having this show. If people watch it and go back and watch it, take notes, because everything I'm talking about, from Marcel Vogel and Peter Tompkins to I have lectures on braiding sweetgrass, on everything from Heinlein to Aspinall. I mean, everybody's speaking a truth, right?
Come on.
And so we don't denigrate anybody that's put out information that they believe is truthful or spiritual or uplifting or helpful.
That's right.
Because it appeals to different people. So all teachers out there are available. You end up with ones that are at the level that you can learn from.
Yes.
It's kind of like, how much squirrel can you talk?
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And as you become more communicative, obviously you learn more. So that's the idea that I have. And I really appreciate being able to talk to you, because this is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun, not like, well,
exactly.
I don't do that, right?
Indeed.
I'm a lot more obnoxious in person, by the way.
Oh wow. Wow. Hey, listen, family, I want to thank everybody tuning in. We still got about 1,600 people watching. Thank you for being tuned in, family. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. Thank you, Randy. Be prepared for everybody to just be calling you, because wow, you delivered a powerful message tonight. Sharif, thank you for the connect, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Said, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Brother Rich, Radiohead Rich signing out. I will see y'all on Monday. Have a good night, y'all. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you.
All right.